The Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, spoke about the economy and the Fed today. Mr. Buffett says the U.S. economy is continuing the, quote, gradual increase that it started since the fall of 2009, end quote. And as for the Fed not tapering yesterday, well, here's what he had to say.
I didn't have any great expectations one way or the other. And it doesn't really make any difference to me in terms of our business or our investments, whether it's 0 or 10 billion or 20 billion. I mean, someday it'll stop and maybe it'll go the other direction.
Well, our guest tonight says that he was surprised the Fed did not taper and that he's not making changes to his investment strategy based on whether it tapers or not. He is Jim Paulsen, Chief Investment Strategist at Wells Capital Management. Welcome, Jim. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Sue.
Did the Fed miss an opportunity, however, even though they didn't taper in your book?
I think so, Sue. I mean, I think they eventually are going to have to start to taper. That's a sign of every successful recovery as the Fed reins in its stimulus. And I think they had an opportunity. Obviously, the markets leading up the last several weeks, most of us all thought they were going to taper, and the markets seemed fine with it. The S&P before yesterday was close to highs. The market was being led by economically sensitive stocks. Didn't look like it was very fearful, and now they didn't taper, and they've created a lot of uncertainty as a result. They're going to have to eventually come back and taper sometime, but now they've created a lot of uncertainty around it, which they probably could have avoided.
As I was listening to Mr. Bernanke yesterday, I thought that, well, he was saying he was a little bit worried about the economy. Should we be?
You know, Tyler, I don't really think so. I'm fairly pleased with the reports coming out. Today's a great example of that. Across the board today, as Sue earlier said, from unemployment claims to housing to leading indicators to the Philly Fed, all suggesting acceleration in the economy. We have, for the first time ever, simultaneously expansion going on in manufacturing and in housing, a constant fall in the unemployment rate, 5-year highs in confidence, as well as an all-time high in the stock market. I think certainly the economy is better than it was, and yet the Fed is still applying the same medicine that it was applying when we were at the bottom of the recession. There just seems to be a disconnect to me.
How are you investing in the environment that you just laid out for us, Jim?
I would pay more attention to reports off Main Street than the conversation around the Fed. I think that might get you down a wrong path. I still think we're on our path to recovery, slow for sure, but certainly slow, steady progress. And I think that's good for stocks in general. And it leans me more towards the economically sensitive areas. Right now, I like the material stocks and technology stocks and the financials. I really like the industrial sector, but the stocks have done so well, I think I'd shy away from that, as well as the consumer discretionary stocks. They've just done too well.
I gather, Jim, you're of the view that all of the monetary stimulus, the bond buying, hasn't really done much to help or bolster the real economy, but an awful lot of people believe that it has done a lot to inflate asset prices. Where are you on that? And if eventually the Fed does take some air out of the balloon, what happens to those asset prices, including stocks, bonds?
You know, Tyler, I don't think it's done much for the economy or the markets. I really don't. I think that they put $3 trillion, and all of it's come back to the Fed in the form of excess reserves. No bank needs those reserves. They're not calling for them, so they sit on reserve at the Fed. They haven't even been in the economy. I think the stock markets come up because the economy's doing better, and people recognize that, and they're willing to step up and pay more for it. And my evidence of that is the stock market was doing just fine in these last several weeks when everyone expected the Fed to start to taper. It showed no fear of tapering at all. So I think we'll be fine when the Fed does taper. Okay. What I hate is when they seem to put so much mystery around it, it creates some uncertainty. Just as you said, Tyler, what do they know that we don't?
Right. On that note, we'll leave it there. We'll see whether we can come up with some answers on that one, Jim.
Thanks.
Jim Paulsen, Chief Investment Strategist at Wells Capital Management.